this work worthwhile. All right, now we are going back to North Carolina, and I want to introduce Judge Jennifer Fleet, who is currently serving in Mecklenburg District Court 26. Before she was on the bench, she spent over 20 years advocating for children, victims, and the underserved as a guardian ad litem. I love those. A DSS caseworker, wonderful. You have 4 sons and a bonus. Who's the bonus? All between 20 and 23. You're not calling your husband the bonus kid, are you? Oh, okay. I was just checking because I do have some friends where, husbands end up over there. They're very loved, but yeah, and then there's my old job. So welcome, Judge Fleet. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so very much. Good evening, y'all. What a pleasure and a privilege to be with so many people who understand just how important this election is for all of us. I'm Judge Jennifer Fleet. I sit on the District Court in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, and I'm here tonight for 3 things. First, if y'all are on your way to vote and you don't have a car full of people, you are several bodies short. Find someone who needs help getting to the polls and offer up. Our neighbors, our friends, and our family, some of them just can't make it on their own. Second, electing competent, thoughtful, fair judges is essential. Every single issue we have touched on tonight, every single one of them, every issue we bring to the table will eventually end up in our courts. No 2 ways about it. Electing competent, thoughtful, fair judges, I'm gonna say it again, is essential. A little tidbit that people generally don't know about our courts. Our chief here in North Carolina, the chief of our North Carolina Supreme Court, that justice has the sole responsibility for appointing and changing summarily the chief district court judge in each of our counties, which can directly affect how our courts run across the state. That seat becomes open in 2028 election cycle. Even though we're focusing on this election here, we must always continue to look forward to future judicial elections. We will have 4 North Carolina Supreme Court seats and 5 seats on our Court of Appeals in play in 2028. My third responsibility tonight, and it's really the best one that I've got, is to introduce one of my esteemed colleagues running to retain her seat on the North Carolina Supreme Court. Justice Allison Riggs received her bachelor's degree, master's degree, and Juris Doctorate from the University of Florida. Go Gators. Have to put that out there. We're a family of Gators over here. In 2013, in the aftermath of the invalidation of our Voting Rights Act during her time as a civil rights litigator, Justice Riggs was fundamental in the formation of SOLVE, the Southern Leaders for Voter Engagement. I'm going to let her tell you more about her amazing work in this particular area of the law. Justice Riggs was the youngest addition to our court, to our North Carolina Supreme Court. She was appointed by Governor Cooper. Prior to being appointed to the North Carolina Supreme Court, she served on our North Carolina Court of Appeals. She comes to us with years of experience as a civil rights attorney, having argued in front of our United States Supreme Court on important cases covering issues of violations of our Voting Rights Act, as well as other very important civil rights cases. Justice Riggs was the co-executive director and chief counsel for voting rights at the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. There is no way I will have enough time to cover as an introduction Madam Justice's qualifications and what an amazing addition she is to our bench. So I'm gonna let her take it from here.
Thank you so much, Wait, that was very kind. I am so delighted to be here with you today, Reverend Sadler. It's so wonderful to see your smiling face. Andrea, I'm a huge fan of your work and so grateful. Just want to spend a few minutes today talking to y'all about the importance of not only the work being done by this group, but transformational, not transactional GOTV. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the kind of engagement, the long-term engagement we do with voters that builds their sense of power and their sense of influence over their elected officials. And I have been so blessed the last year and a half, 2 years, to be campaigning for statewide judicial office and really getting to engage with constituents in this state who maybe don't understand the power of the judiciary and the importance of voting. And I say this as someone who spent 15 years prior to joining the bench doing civic engagement and voter protection work. Voters know how important their vote is. We have work to do to make sure that they get the most out of that vote. So what do I mean by that? I mean that when we talk to voters, it cannot be, and this is a theme I've heard already tonight, so pardon me if it's a little repetitive, but it's so important. If we show up once every 4 years, if we show up once even every 2 years, people don't get what they need from us in terms of protecting their vote and their information that they need in order to be able to use their vote in the most meaningful way possible. So I know that we have work to do to remind folks that we have 3 branches of government here in North Carolina. You heard from Braxton, there's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And my goodness, can we imagine a North Carolina where every single branch of government is working for the people instead of against the people? Where we have courts who expand and protect rights, including the right to vote, instead of chipping away the right to vote. And y'all, we here in North Carolina have frequently been ground zero for so many of the important battles. We were, when the United States Supreme Court overturned Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, it was the North Carolina legislature that was first out of the gate saying, great, now that the Shelby County's decision is gone, we can enact a full voter bill. And we're like, what does that mean? It meant a full voter suppression bill. And similarly, we've been at the front of folks before we got our base understanding how important our state courts were. We were the subject of highly partisan, dark money funded judicial elections, and people who cared about justice were voted off of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And immediately following that, the North Carolina Supreme Court reversed a decision that struck down extreme partisan gerrymandering. The North Carolina Supreme Court reversed a decision striking down a racially discriminatory voter ID law, and the North Carolina Supreme Court greenlit the continued disenfranchisement of people who'd had interactions with the criminal justice system. So we have seen and lived and felt what the consequences are of not using our vote to its full effect and not remembering that we have the power not just to elect members of Congress or the governor of North Carolina, but people on our benches who will protect North Carolinians. So when I talk to people about the courts, and this is what y'all are doing, you are talking to people about how to use their vote and how to hold people accountable. I think of it as I have a playing deck of cards in my head. And my first thing I do is I listen. I listen to what the voters care about. I ask them and I listen. And so when voters say, I really worry about my kids getting a quality public education, I let them know that in your North Carolina Supreme Court, there are cases that are about whether or not public education is a constitutional right And I'll tell you, our North Carolina Constitution says that every child in North Carolina is entitled to a sound basic education. But this question yet still comes up. So if people care about public education, that's what I tell them. If they care about the environment, I tell them a story of what happened a few years ago in the North Carolina Supreme Court. The North Carolina Supreme Court, when it was governed by justice-minded individuals, said when big energy spills toxins into your rivers and lakes, it cannot pass the cost of cleaning that up entirely on the consumers. Because you know what happens when that happens? Folks lose their homes. And I go and spend a lot of time in northeastern North Carolina because that is where I did so much of my voting rights and civil rights work over the years. And I talk to folks who feel the anxiety of economic uncertainty, and they want to use their vote in a powerful way, but they didn't realize that the economic uncertainty that they're feeling is not just dictated by the people in Congress. They have so much power up and down the ballot. And when we use that playing card, we're like, oh, you live in northeastern North Carolina, where big energy has spilled toxins into your rivers and lake, where your energy costs are getting so high that people are losing their homes. Older folks in predominantly African-American communities are losing their homes because of the cost of energy. And the courts can do something about that, right? So this is the power that we have, and we cannot, in any election, whether it's the presidential or the local, lose this opportunity to tell people what is at stake. And I do this in our judicial races too. Y'all, we are facing people who embrace a judicial philosophy that is so extreme that it would mean that we would lose our right to marriage equality. We have lost our right to reproductive freedom. We would lose our right to access contraception. It's called originalism and it's gotten mainstreamed, but what it means is that we only care about what the drafters of the Constitution think, even though the drafters of the Constitution might have thought, I don't get a vote because I'm a woman. Dr. Sadler doesn't get a vote because he's a Black man. Andrea doesn't get a vote because she's a Black woman. This is a false and extreme ideology. It's partisan politics in our courtroom instead of common sense and compassion. And if we miss one chance to tell people and to warn them of what's at stake, we will rue that for so long. And we have had opportunities to name this extremism. This is an extremism that will, in the end, undermine our civil rights, undermine our right to vote, and undermine, in fact, the heart of our democracy. So I don't believe that this is melodramatic talk, because I have, in the 16 years I've been in North Carolina, seen the chipping away of our rights by extremists in every branch of government when they have power. And it is our job to make sure that when voters go in the ballot box, they're using their vote to exercise their power up and down the ballot across every branch of government, and that we continue showing up and putting on those listening ears to engage with voters and modify what we talk about to be the most present and the most resonant and the most responsive officials in my situation and Judge Fleet's situation, be in community and be responsive, and for voter engagement leaders to make sure that we are not always just doing the same thing when times are changing. We are listening to what voters need, and we are crafting our message to engage them in a really timely way. So thank you all for what you're doing to support this incredible organization. Thank you all for fighting with us, standing hand in hand to fight with us for the democracy, the inclusive multiracial democracy we all deserve. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Grateful for you, Justice Riggs, for you, Judge Fleet. We're grateful for the fact that we have people that we can count on to do the right thing that are sitting in our judicial branch. And I'm so grateful for the work that you all are doing, because without you there, and we started to realize this in recent years, things can go greatly awry. Right now, I just want to say, Andrea, why is this work so important? Why is this election so important that we have to come out and vote now? I've heard people say things like democracy is on the ballot, whether or not we want to be a democracy going forward, what type of government we will have going forward. I've heard other people say that the future of all of our people, our coalition, are we going to be a nation that is ruled by a particular kind of people, or an inclusive nation where everyone gets to participate? Are we going to be a group where only some people get to experience prosperity? Or will we have inclusive prosperity? So why is it so important that we are active, working to make sure that everyone gets out and exercises not their right, but their franchise to vote?
I love that question, Reverend Rodney, and it is all of the above. Let's go back to two things. Make America great again. When? What part of the past are we going back to? Are we going back to when women couldn't vote? Are we going back to when Black people couldn't vote? Are we going back to when Black people were slaves? How far back in the past are we going to when in the past we were great? As a country, we get better as we move forward and become more inclusive, not the other way around.
Amen.
All right.